All right, welcome back to another Transformation Friday on OpenShift Commons. Today we're bringing you something from south of the equator, transformation stories, adoption adventures with Santiago Sinelnicof, who is one of my favorite people and a collaborator in hosting next week's OpenShift Commons gathering. That's going to be all in Spanish. Today he's not going to speak in Spanish, which is really helpful for me because I stopped Spanish in high school, and that's about where it ends. And I won't even try. I think ahora and por favor are about, that's the extent of my Spanish, Santi. It's really bad. I have a German last name and a German father, so I'll stick to that as my second language. But I'm eternally grateful for all the work that Santi has done in Latin America, as in terms of helping to get the Commons off the ground. For the past 3 years, he's been the moderator and co-host and co-curator and co-conspirator, getting the OpenShift Commons gatherings up and running there. He's going to be my moderator and translator for hosting on Monday, September 21st, the Latin America one, which you'll be able to see some of his other cohorts there, as well as Andrew Clay Schaefer. So we'll pop the link to that in the chat after this. But Santi's also been one of what I talk about the office of the GTO here at Red Hat is the 4 horsemen of transformation, and he's sort of the horseman for Latin America for espousing digital transformation, coaching people, and doing DevOps, and helping organizations understand how to take on digital transformation challenges. So today, I'm really psyched to have him here to share his stories. And hopefully, even after this one, we'll have more Latin American stories, because in October, we're going to kick off an all-Spanish Latin American and Spain and any other Spanish-speaking country focused OpenShift Commons Hour, and Santi will be back for that as well, for sure. So I'm going to stop blathering on about how wonderful Santi is and let him tell his story. So Santiago, introduce yourself, tell us about your role, and then take us on this adoption adventure.
Well, first, I'm incredibly honored and humbled by your words. I'm about to cry, but I won't. I'd be happy and honored to be called the gaucho of digital transformation. That's something I would aspire to. Like Diane said, we've been working together since 2018, trying to bring this magic of community to Latin America, and the help that Diane put in doing that was awesome. So this magic of Red Hat, of feeling supported because you share a common cause, is really like is happening here right now. So I'm incredibly grateful for your help, Diane. So the idea today is to talk to you about how it was, what the journey we moved through, beginning with nothing around containers and Kubernetes and OpenShift in Latin America in, say, 2015, 2016, to the stage where we are today, where OpenShift is also in this region a key component of the subcontinent's digital transformation. And I want to talk, of course, from my perspective, there's hundreds of people working on this and making this happen. But from my perspective, what the story was, what the keys to this story was, what the evolving needs of the customers were, and how we responded to that, and in particular, how instrumental was the OpenShift Commons into bringing true advancement in the adoption of OpenShift. So if you need to know something about me, is that I have a long software consultant and architect career, and something particular about me is that I've worked with all the geological ages of technology, from IBM mainframes to Linux and to Kubernetes, and in all industries and across all of Latin America. So I get quite a good view of how systems were done 20 years ago, how those systems are still being done today, and what the actual challenges in the transition in terms of mindset are important and are the key ones, and how to communicate, how to talk, how to reconcile the new ideas with the legacy ideas. You also need to know that I have a daughter, and I'm wearing my most preferred T-shirt that Diane handed me in person in 2018. This is a family vacation. And you also need to know that my favorite movie of all time is this Jewel, Contact. And if you have seen the movie and you see some kind of parallel between the story I'm going to tell today and the story of the movie, it's absolutely not coincidental. Okay, so here we go. You know, Latin America, we are very colorful, but also our relationship with the developed world is always complicated. We kind of never define how we want to relate with the developed world, if we want to be absolutely subservient or we want to be absolutely rebellious. We only know that we like soccer and we like competing with the developed world in soccer and beating the developed world. But other than that, it's complicated for us in terms of of collaborating with the West, with the developed world. But that's not so much in science and technology. Truly, throughout the history, we have a culture of doing what we can with the resources we have to collaborate with the rest of the world in science and technology. So, for instance, when you're writing with a ball pen, you're writing with a Latin American invention. When you're hopefully you'll never get it, but if you get a coronary bypass, you're receiving a Latin America development. And if you need scientific proof of the effects of the lack of ozone in the northern pole, you will find key research done in an area from Latin Americans, as well as other things related to health mainly. And also in terms of technology, you will find that there are many very important enterprises in the digital world, globally and subcontinentally, many of whom are part of the New York Stock Exchange, for instance, that are developed in Latin America, and very proudly, and with a lot of vocation of being a player, being players, and collaborate with the development of digital transformation in the world. So it should be no surprise then that down in South America, in Latin America, we've seen a great adoption of open source technologies and OpenShift, with over 250 customers in all industries, in private and public sector. Also, that in the last 5 years, we've had 5 Red Hat Innovation Awards winners, and even 1 Red Hat Innovator of the Year winner, which was Avianca in, I believe, 2016 or 2015. And in the last Innovation Awards, we had like 3 finalists. So we are this is a continent that's very connected with innovation. With the limited resources, we do the very best that we can, and we are extremely passionate about creating new solutions and trying to solve many of our different issues and needs in the continent. So the idea is to tell you, so I need to do a very brief disclaimer here. I'm from Argentina, which is like this country south here. And so the story that I'm going to tell you is mostly from my perspective, because I don't want to tell a story that I've not particularly been part of, but you need to know that the same story, a very similar story, it happened all around the subcontinent, and we will be other guys from the region will be very happy to share that story in following talks. So this all started in around 2015, 2016, when we received the first edition of OpenShift 3, and we discovered this particular piece of magic. The idea that from a created registry, you could very quickly develop and build a component that could go to production in a matter of seconds. And you could do it continually with 0 interruptions from bureaucracy or manual processes. This was in the words of many people in the region, this was magic to us. And this is a word that customers actually use and that we internally actually use. And everyone who's been in contact with the technology, I believe, felt the same. This is magic. This is actually a spark of magic. And so this was very important to us because really in Latin America, we don't really have web scale, right? Our banks have like thousands of customers, not like hundreds of millions of customers. Our populations tend to be too small, and our digital populations tend to be small as well. So more important than scale to us was this exactly was the magic component that got all of us and also the customers interested in OpenShift. So at that time, Red Hat was a very respected and known company, but we really had a very little footprint in the strategic minds of the customers, right? So customers had a lot of RHEL, some application servers, whatever, but they really didn't think of Red Hat as a strategic partner for digital transformation. So the Balrog here would be all the other incumbents, all the other big companies, you know who they are, who were actually the strategic partners of our customers and with whom we needed to compete with this new way of doing things, open source, DevOps, etc., and to gain mind share within our customers. And the magic that we would use to do this was the magic that I just described. And we found a lot of allies inside these organizations, mostly architecture managers, architecture directors. The first guy that allowed us to do a true proof of concept in Argentina in particular was Martín de Lía from Banco Itaú, when he couldn't see that happening very quick to adopt DevOps and all of this, but he wanted to kickstart because he believed in the magic that we were having, and a lot of other people inside the customers thought that way. So the first stage of adoption was us going inside the customers absolutely for free and doing proof of concepts, bringing the PowerPoint that people love and the demos that people love into their data center and helping them migrate a small application, something that they could really see that within their data center, this magic could actually work. And we did a lot of those. And one that I'm particularly proud of is the one we did in Ministry of Modernization, where we told the customer the presentation, the value proposition of OpenShift, and the customer said, right, I love this, but I need to see it working. Make it work, and you have the project. And in 6 days, we installed the platform in their data center, and we migrated the key components of a very large and complex application. And in 6 days, we could show that application working, and the guys shook our hands and said, you have the project. And it's today probably one of the largest OpenShift implementations in the whole of Latin America, powering the digital transformation of government administration in Argentina. So this was the time of doing POCs, of really showing that the technology could work in the data center and starting to create momentum of adoption, but from a very early and incipient stage. So that's when the first OpenShift Commons gathering happened in Buenos Aires. We met with Diane in a Commons gathering in San Francisco, and I remember approaching her and with all like tremoring and saying, Diane, please bring this to LATAM. And she said, yes, but I don't really trust you. And then in the process, it was a couple of months that we put it together, and we find magic working together. So we put together a great event. And the key to this event was that every customer that was from LATAM didn't really have anything mature to show and to share. So we convinced a guy from Santander, Spain, that they really were mature in using OpenShift as a global platform to come down to Buenos Aires and to explain to us how a mature OpenShift operation looked like. And we did what we Latin Americans do. We went to the expats, and this guy came very coincidentally was a former um, um, teammate, workmate of mine in IBM in very early years, and he happened to be Christian Roldan, the manager of the Banco Santander's pass. So we got to convince him with wine and barbecue, and he came down and gave an extraordinary speech about an hour and a half, and going into tough detail of how it really was to operate OpenShift and containers and continuous delivery and deployment at scale. And so around his talk, we could then showcase all the other customers, which were basically saying, yeah, we are going into this, but these are our plans, but we're not nowhere as mature as them. We even had a panel where some very important customers were just saying, yeah, we're exploring this, we're working on this. But this talk was very important because it showed to all these other people who were timidly doing their first steps, how it was done and what was the end result of what they were starting. The other key action that happened was in a Red Hat summit. This guy, who to me is the Lionel Messi of digital transformation, Luis Ugina from Macquarie Bank, who happens to be a Spaniard, so he speaks Spanish, got together with the CIO of a very important bank from Argentina, and he performed some magic Jedi mind control on this CIO. He wiped his head, and this CIO came back and said, let's go full throttle with OpenShift. And this bank is a great regional reference for all other banks. So after this happened, this change, I mean, this green lighting of all the OpenShift projects in this particular bank, all the other customers and banks particularly switch it from saying, who are you, to saying, I need OpenShift, sell me whatever it's OpenShift, give me 10 of that. So it was very important, this connection amongst people, and this spark, these sparks happening in key minds, it was very, very important for the adoption. So after this first common, we already had a roadmap, like in the minds of the people. So we were habilitated. I don't know how to say it. We could establish a conversation that was like, okay, so if you want to be like Santander, you want to be like Macquarie, you want to do all this magic that you saw, these are the steps that you need to take. And let's talk about forming an OpenShift team. Let's talk about putting something in production, then scaling by adding more applications and refining your processes and your practices of administration, of application architecture, of everything. We were able to start discussing about roadmaps of transformation, but based on a final picture that customers had already seen and almost touched in person in that event. So when the next OpenShift Commons came, and we decided to do one per year, and we kind of figured it out as like an agile cadence, right? And doing like our weekly, but once a year. And so when the second OpenShift Commons gathering happened, it was like the demo time of the agile process. The word that we used in the introduction was like vertigo, right? Because we were like all full speed, full throttle ahead, adopting containers, doing key projects, more mission critical projects, and kickstarting all the transformation in many customers, about 36 at that time in banks, in government, etc., with important key transformation projects all happening on the technology. So this time we did have those banks that were like sitting in a chair, like saying, yeah, we're starting with this, coming back and telling, this is all we're doing. We're reimagining customer interaction with the bank. We have like hundreds of developers on the platform, and we are doing like code archetypes to automate the onboarding process of new development teams to the application. So the discussion really changed into really how it's being done, and how each customer was like putting a lot of great ideas and great minds and great practices into the platform. So we also showcased one of our customers, the Banco Hipotecario, was very generous in showcasing their in production experience with their actual home banking and their actual transaction processing. So it was key to have someone who was saying, no, we are not just doing, but we have already done, and this works, and this doesn't break, and this is awesome. We even got to have a CIO on stage. We actually had 3 of them, but this was a particular particularly important one, because he's a CIO in healthcare, and he explained how he was doing the digital transformation of his organization through the adoption of cloud native and the platform. And we also had the generosity of Andrew Block, who I believe many of you know him. I love him. He's a hero to me. And he got a very important customer, ExxonMobil, who has offices down here in Latin America, very important ones, to come and showcase some of what they were doing with a very unique use case. So the second commons was like, okay, now we're full throttle. This is going somewhere. And people were very engaged after that. So what came after this was, okay, customers started to feel the heat of trying to do this new type of work, trying to do DevOps, trying to do PaaS, platform as a service, trying to do agile development, while still dealing with old practices, old structures. And they started to see the effects of like not going full digital, full DevOps, and kind of like trying to negotiate, okay, the PaaS, but it's managed by the IT department, and the IT department uses a very traditional ETL process, and then the developers are not really being heard in terms of what they need, and all those kinds of issues that are absolutely natural. But now that projects started to go into scale, they started to emerge, and the customer started needing responses to that. So one of the things that we did was to create like a kind of a framework to discuss these issues. We would present it as, oh, okay, so the PaaS is now like a second heart that you need to put into a body that has place for one single heart, or like a new organ that you don't even have where to put it. And you need to create this new organization. You need to open up your mind and say, this is a new object, a new artifact. It's a software platform that combines in the same artifact development, reusable blocks, and development best practices as software, with delivery processes as software, and platform services as software. So you can't really treat those like a box, and you need a new team that has a software mindset for handling platforms. And you need to give space for this team to operate. And then how is the new backlog and roadmap negotiations between development and product teams, PaaS team, and infra team, and how the PaaS becomes a convergence point for both all the innovation that comes from open source, all your policies about SecOps and quality, and all your best practices and architectural directions that come from architecture. So when things started to go to scale, these were the type of discussions that we needed to be able to talk to customers and to start doing like the mind changing process, so that so that we could overcome the barrier for growth that is adopting a lot of OpenShift, but with old mindsets, right? We needed to create the change of mindset so that this adoption could continue to change and to bring value to the organizations that trusted in this change in the first place. And the second thing that happened was that I have a phrase that it's obviously stolen. It's probably not mine, but I tend to tell customers that you always start transformation by technology, and then when you're about 30% of the way, you realize that the problem was culture all along, right? And so the emergence of open innovation labs, particularly in Latin America, it was created, the Open Innovation Labs Latin America, led by Fabio Pereira, who's a great guy, the first agilist in Latin America from Brazil. He's such a great agility leader and thought leader. And we started to be able to have something from Red Hat to help the customers, not only in the technological transition, but also in the cultural transition. And we started working with them initially through the DO 500 training, which proved to be amazing. I mean, I did it and I was amazed, and customers did it and created a lot of positive feedback about these practices and the way of working that we were offering, and that brought space and discussion to have labs residencies in Latin America, like what the guys in Brazil did with Via Varejo, which was very, very interesting. And also what we did with some very large customers, which we started with doing some DO 500 for some teams, and then more teams wanted it, and we did like hundreds of people trained in the DO 500, and then the positive feedback was so good that even senior management, like the CIO and all his 20 directors, wanted to like get a taste of what we were doing. So we created like a small scale 2 days executive culture workshop, and that kickstarted the idea that Red Hat could help these and other customers in the cultural transformation at senior management levels. And then we've since been doing that work with a couple of organizations and started to doing at more and very important customers. So we had to react. I mean, as that magic turned into a spark, and that spark started to grow into a fire, we had to react with how to continue accelerating this at the scale it was beginning to take, and it was a hell of a challenge, but we were able to continue responding. So we're very proud of that as an organization. And then that's gonna be the theme of the LATAM OSCG next Monday, which will have Diane for the first time. We will have you with us opening the event, and it's very important from us because of what you represent in the connection between Red Hat and the open source communities. But also the great Andrew Clay Schaefer is going to give an extraordinary talk. I saw some of the slides and stuff he talks about. Is like mind-boggling even for a guy who does DevOps every day. So it's awesome. And then we will have an executive panel of 5 regional CIOs who are going to be talking about culture, right? So they will not be talking about really like, oh, the containers and stuff. Like what did we learn from trying to do cultural change in organizations that are extremely legacy, extremely politically complicated, large, and with a lot of legacy, and share their experiences. And we have some very important figures there. There's one of the guys who comes from Mercado Libre, from an actual digital company, and went into a bank, one of the most traditional banks in the country, and his clash of cultures that he embodies is very, very interesting to hear. And also all the other guys have great stories to tell. And then also we will have some great customer cases and stories. There's a digital TV system that is a service that is being migrated to OpenShift. There's a whole bank transforming. We have an insurance company and another bank, and finally a case that I'm very proud of, which is the digital what's it called, the Digital Interoperability Network in healthcare, in public healthcare in Argentina. And they did what's the dream of the digital single unified medical history of everyone, so that you go to any doctor and he can just see all of your medical history and all of the treatments and all of the medication that you ever took. And this is an extraordinary project that's being a reference in the world, and it's great to have them and see how they evolved even in the COVID era, for which this project was extremely like instrumental for the response that the government had to do. So it's a great content that we will have, and what it will be as in the next stage of evolution and adoption of what we're doing. So what we are seeing, and we were discussing with Diane when we were preparing the opening for the Commons, is that the next stage, what we're seeing is this widespread adoption of OpenShift platforms is bringing like a common substrate over which to solidify common practices, and those common practices give us a common language in which to use to collaborate amongst, not only within an organization, but within many organizations, between many organizations. So what we're seeing next is the emergence of collaboration at scale, right? And again, this is a stolen idea. I mean, Andrew Clay Schaefer said, great ideas are stolen, so I feel like validated to keep stealing ideas, so I will continue to do that. I saw it in a Harvard Business Review article that said the era of moving fast and breaking things within one company, yeah, it's great, but that's not the thing anymore. The thing now is to be able to orchestrate all those innovation cultures and momentum within all organizations, and to start working together to solve the big issues and the big problems of society, of civilization, that really transcend each of us and cannot be solved by any of us. And like I said, with the base of everyone using open source and using technology that's curated by a meritocratic process of innovation, so that everyone is using the same technology, but not because they are forced to, but because this is objectively the best technological way to go forward. This enables common practices, this creates open communities, and this finally enables this open collaboration. And in the region, we are starting to see these. For instance, with the Digital Interoperability Network in healthcare, but that will be transcending to justice. For instance, in the public sector, it will be transcending to insurance, to many other areas. And in the other hand, in the private sector, for instance, the banks got tired of getting their being beaten by the fintech world, so they decided to create their own fintech, and working together with open APIs and open banking, and starting to collaborate amongst them to present a formidable competition to the digital natives that were eating their cake. So this is just beginning, this collaboration at scale. Uruguay, with the guys from AGESIC, as always, they were the first OpenShift customers in Latin America, and they are always one step ahead. That they had two presentations in the previous OpenShift Commons, so you can go and check what they were doing years before the rest. But this is only beginning, but we see this is where everything going, and we as Red Hat are starting to think how we can help and catalyze that and help that happen, because we believe our open culture is very useful for helping this large scale collaboration. And the idea of the OpenShift Commons, including like senior managers and everything, has to do with becoming a place where organizations can come together and discuss and collaborate and ideate where to move forward in a kind of a common roadmap. So I'm absolutely like amazed at what we've been doing here, all of us, and what can we do in the future. I believe we're only just starting.
And I would totally agree with you, Santi. I think one of the things that this is kind of a really nice showcase of, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. And I'm so looking forward to Monday and hearing more stories as the open collaboration continues to grow in Latin America. But I think that what you sort of showcase is the power of what I try and do with OpenShift Commons is peer-to-peer networking. So if you think back to like when you were showcasing the magic and when you were when folks from Santander and other companies were coming in and they were sharing their stories, and in the past, you know, even just 5-6 years ago, not even the distant past, people were so caught up in the competitiveness. You know, we can't tell anybody what our secret sauce is. We can't tell anybody what our competitive advantage is. And now the competitive advantage really is this open collaboration, this sharing of stories, and this building of communities of peers that help each other. You know, they may still have secret sauces, because I know you guys have really good barbecue down there. I remember that. And it's awesome. Maybe a wee much on how much meat you make me every time I come down there, but it's pretty amazing. But I think that the thing that's really interesting, because people think of banks really historically as being really closed and not open to sharing their insights and being, you know, sometimes we hear, and it is still true, is that a lot of them have compliance and audit and risk issues that, you know, don't allow them to contribute directly to an open source project. But this is another layer of openness, right? So there's one side of open source, which is about, can I push my code into a public repo? Can I do this? Can I do that? And more of that's happening. We have what I call sort of this virtuous end user cycle that's beginning to evolve, and we're seeing where now end users are, you know, like Amadeus and others and ExxonMobil and other people are being able to contribute upstream to Kubernetes, and that filters down. And that's actually where we, as Red Hat, want them to put it. We want them to put it up there because that's where we're collaborating and building the core of OpenShift, and is in the Kubernetes and Cloud Native Foundation. But it's this beyond the code. It's the open culture, the sharing of stories, and I think it's maybe stereotyping Latin America a little bit, but I think the openness with which, you know, it always amazes me, the banking industry was really, for me, in Latin America, the first ones to step up. The government, Ital, Serpro, people like, I can remember going down to Foz de Gazu, I'm probably saying that wrong, for an open source conference that was hosted. Foz de Gazu is those huge waterfalls that if anybody sees on the tourist map, it's brilliant. But it was hosted at a government center that was generating power, and there was this huge open source conference there. But it was the government agencies really too in Latin America that took on and embraced what we call magic, and that to me was really powerful, because that's not the same way it happened here in North America. It's, you know, it's a different, you know, different groups, different cultures, Silicon Valley, you know, startups, and, you know, wonderfulness happening in California. It was a very different route to coming to being cloud native and being open. And I think that there's a sensibility in Latin America that really helped drive this as well. And it's going to be interesting to see where we go on Monday and what's next and what we hear next. But is that, am I stereotyping you guys? I mean, I really do think that's, you have a very open culture of sharing.
Well, to be honest, that was a change. I mean, historically, the banks wouldn't tell you what they were doing. The telcos never, and everything. But that's what created all those unicorns, because the talent that we really have a great a talent pool of people, of developers, of technicians that really love their stuff. You will see a lot of open source communities that have a lot of contributors from Argentina, from Latin America in general, much more from Brazil probably than from Argentina. I'm very sorry. But you have this personal passion. But then in the traditional organizations, particularly in private sector, it was more dominated by closed source, like by the big vendors, Balrog that I was putting there. And this created these unicorns, this new, we don't really have a Silicon Valley, but this virtual Silicon Valley that created and kickstarted Mercado Libre, Nubank, and Globant, and etc. They started eating the incumbents' pie. They beat them at electronic payments, for instance. They beat them at many things. So this opened the door in these traditional organizations for this young talent, the young in the mind, right? This fresh talent to kind of bring these ideas to them, because if they didn't do that, they would be out of business incredibly quickly. And now, but the great thing that, like you say, is if we have something in Latin America, what I would say is we are very adaptable. Since we live in crisis all the time, it's in our ADN to react very, very quickly. And so the same senior manager that said, I don't want any open source, 5 minutes later was saying, open source is the way, and all in. And so the change happened very rapidly. And then you had all this openness very, very quickly. And that was also catalyzed. I don't wanna diminish the role of this, because there was nothing like an OpenShift Commons gathering present in Latin America before. So it was also catalyzed by there actually being a place to do this sharing, right? In previous, it would be like a branded event where you had the CIO invited to give a generic talk about what they're doing. And this was for the technical people, for the technical community. Let's talk technology. Let's talk bits and bytes, like we say down here. And that space didn't exist. So at the corporate level, at the enterprise level, and this was huge because of what OpenShift Commons is. Again, yeah. I cannot thank you enough for OpenShift Commons.
So yeah, and I think the role of Commons, and in creating a Commons, whether it's an OpenShift Commons or any Commons, is creating spaces for people to share their stories, whether in safe and healthy environments. But that's always a key to it, and having it be something. And I'm always on it about peer-to-peer, right? We talk. You're Red Hat, I'm Red Hat. And I love working at Red Hat. It's awesome. You all should work there. But I'd much rather hear from an end user or an upstream project lead or someone who's got some real interesting workload, and have them tell the story, because it's that real world experience that really makes a difference. There's a talk. I'm just in the finishing touches of recording a talk on what we are calling an AI ML initiative that America Mobile is the one, which is a Mexican company, telco, very big. I'm sure you've heard of them. We've and interacted with them too. But it's they are spearheading with a number of other telcos this thing called the Enterprise Neurosystem Initiative, which is about using AI and ML and AI ops on all of the enterprise data inside of companies. And I mean, that is really, truly, it's there's some fostering going on with Red Hatters helping facilitate the initiative and get it off the ground, but it's really something that's coming out of America Mobile and what they're actually already doing, right? and they're just sharing it and trying to bring more people up to speed on how this all works. And you find that sort of conversation, to me, is probably the most exciting thing. It is the new magic, right? So the magic, the original magic was, wow, look at this platform as a service. I can, with a couple of clicks, deploy my, I jokingly say, deploy my WordPress app, and it will scale to, handle Thanksgiving sales of my whatever I'm selling, right? Like, early days of platform as service, it really was magic, right? And then as containers got added to it, it became even more magical and maybe a little mystical as we started navigating namespaces and pods and Greek names of things like Kubernetes. So it's like, but the original concept was about this magical thinking, right? Not in a fantasy way, but in a way that was magical thinking, that by working in the open, by working, like adding automation and DevOps into your culture, and having the conversations between developers and operators start happening early days to evolve into these new roles, these new things like DevOps and I heard you sort of a little disparaging ITIL and things like that. But taking those things and sharing all of that, what people have learned across their organizations internally. So, and I love the bit about having to do the workshop or hosting the workshop because the C-level folks, the executives, wanted to get in on this culture thing, right? And I think that's the other key too, is I always, I sometimes joke a little bit about when I onboard. OpenShift Commons is organizational based, right? So an organization joins, and then anybody from that organization can participate in the working groups, the SIGs, the gatherings, come give a briefing. It doesn't matter. You could be the executive assistant to the CEO or a hands-on sysadmin. You can join. And that conceptually is also a breaking of some of the barriers, as you were describing, because yeah, Red Hat forums, hands-on hackathon workshops that we host, and those things, those are focused and targeted things. But what I think we're trying to do here is break some of the barriers down and create better lines of communication and sharing of stories between all the levels in organizations. And I don't claim to have invented this by any stretch, but I think the key, and if anyone's listening out there, is to create a commons, to create a space, to give away the podium to other people to speak. So it's not just Red Hatters talking, though that's what it is today, but to really, to create spaces for people and organizations to cross-pollinate, because I kind of joke about community development today as being like three-dimensional chess. Those old class. So you've got one angle that is the projects and the products and the Kubernetes and all the technologies up there. And then you have another angle that's all of the end users. So what are they doing? And then there's even and there's probably more than three dimensions. There's another dimension that I look at often, that's verticals. Because what you're telling in those rooms where you're sharing your stories is something might click for a telco that a bank is doing, that might click for someone, might do a talk on GPUs or on edge technology or IoT or something like that they're doing. So it's becoming, and it's also interesting because we're now focusing more and more on workloads. Like, what is your workload on OpenShift? Because like HTML and everything else under the hood of the internet, we don't look under the hood so much anymore. Now we want to make sure that the magic that is OpenShift and Kubernetes and all this cloud native wonderful service mesh technology will work and support all of these workloads. So it's really important for us at Red Hat to hear these stories, to get the feedback, to figure out things like, and I have to say, I've been deep in NVIDIA GPU talks, which is where that enterprise neurosystem one just came out of. and so everything has been about, how can we get high performance? How can we tune our GPU and get on bare metal, and whether it's Dell or Intel or whomever's metal that we're running on these days. So I have a lot of that in my, but the thing is, it's like maybe the new thing now is really focusing, and I think we'll see that Monday a bit too, is people sharing the stories about their workloads and how they've tuned the underpinnings that is what Red Hat brings to the table. The other thing that's really been interesting since in the past 3 years is the rise of reference architectures for specific workloads. So I don't think we have a talk on Open Data Hub on Monday, but Open Data Hub is a really good example of this. It's like you might know me through my Twitter handle that I usually do all of my work stuff through, which is OpenShift Common. But I also have another side of the house, which is Python DJ. So I'm a longtime Python. I used to love Django, and I really love Jupyter notebooks and that side of the house quite a bit too. And we've seen the evolution of like single Jupyter notebooks to hosting Jupyter Hub to this whole new framework for building and training AI and machine learning models on top of OpenShift. And there's this reference architecture called Open Data Hub, which people have taken that reference architecture and built whole clouds on them. Mass Open Cloud, Massachusetts Open Cloud, which is powering the Boston Children's Hospital. All kinds of really cool stuff is happening. And now that's turning into an actual productized thing. So it's like, and this is all happening in like less than 3 years, this whole arc. So going back to like originally at the very beginning, before we even turned the recording button on, we're talking about the origin of Commons was about dealing with the fire hose of information that we had to get out to the community and to our end users and to our partners and upstream folks when we did the pivot to rebasing OpenShift on Kubernetes. That's sort of the origin story for Commons, OpenShift Commons, is that all of a sudden we had to reach everybody fast and tell them, whoa guys, 2.0 was something, but 3.0 is something new, and it's really cool. But to do this, you're going to have to sit in this fire hose and listen to all of this conversation about pods and these Greek name things that you hadn't even thought about. And that's like 4 years ago, I think, four years ago. So, and today the fire hose is even bigger, and there's more of it, right?
Yeah, and it also became like a place where ideas like could join and be interconnected and kind of mate. There's this great TED talk that is called When Ideas Have Sex, where this guy from England proposes a biological model of idea reproduction and recombination that follows similar rules to sexual reproduction in nature. And this is this phenomenon, like the OpenShift Commons is a place where ideas get combined and produce new ideas, and ideas are curated, and the conversation is all about that. Okay. And if you would allow me 2 minutes for this is a kind of a personal epiphany that I had one day about what really is DevOps and what really is this process that we're talking about and ideas mating and everything. And so this is a presentation. It's in Spanish, but it's trying to explain what DevOps is. And DevOps is this circle, this feedback loop between the digital product that users are using and the code, the version code that creates that product. And we are working iteratively with all these brains, like modifying the code and then evolving the product and then receiving feedback and then evolving the product again. And then it's a cycle of evolution through code to individual iterations of the product. I wanted to ask, do you see any other object or process in the universe that kind of looks like something like this? Code that creates an instance of something, and then from the feedback of how that something does in life, the code gets evolved. I can give you an answer, and the answer is life. It works exactly the same way. So would you agree with me that it's fair to say that DevOps is doing business or things like God intended?
I think you've got something there, definitely. And oh my God, is that Messi?
This is Messi and this is Diego Maradona, who is the actual God. And these are his angels, some other people that you will never know of, but we do.
Awesome. Now that is quite the way to end this talk. And I don't know how you're gonna top this on Monday. This is just something. Um, if you don't know me and Santi have been having this ongoing conversation about Messi leaving the team and then coming back, and you know, the crisis that it is in Argentina. So on the backside of everything. So this is quite the great way to end this talk. But yeah, I think we have we have the DNA. We always talk about that at Red Hat, that open source is in our DNA, that open culture and open shift is, you know, just a facilitator for that. So that's been part of the conversation. It's allowed us to help companies and organizations like the ones that Santi has mentioned today, as well as it's helped Red Hat evolve as well too. And we, you know, we eat our own dog food. We do this stuff internally. That's a bad metaphor, I think. We definitely do live and breathe this, and it is something that is very much now, I think, ingrained in our culture, and it's wonderful to see it becoming ingrained in the culture in the open source communities in Latin America. I'm totally looking forward to Monday, especially because Andrew Clay Schaefer is going to be talking, and somehow they managed to get his 45-minute talk to have subtitles. And so it's going to be in English, but it's going to have Spanish subtitles. And I am just waiting. I almost want to see just what the subtitles are, because they're going to be like ticker tape going so fast, because he talked and so conceptual. So it's going to be really interesting to see that. And I think we're going to rebroadcast that next week on Friday with Andrew adding color commentary to it. So we'll have the event on Monday, and then we'll reboot again and do a recap at the same time next week. So Santi, you'll have to say come to that as well next week, and make your color commentary and give us some feedback on that, because one of the exciting things about this new era that we're in, and I really hope everybody who's listening to this is safe, is healthy, and is able to connect with us on Monday, and if not, virtually in other places. But it's really pretty amazing how global and how this virtual new world and these lower friction tools that we have, like live streaming or Slack or even TikTok, which I think today Oracle just bought part of, or something crazy like that, if I believe what the memes were that were coming. So there's like all of these tools that we have, they're great, but if we don't create a space for them and for us to come together and share them, they're just individual tools talking to individuals and creating small threads, and not bringing together a community. So there's this level of where you have to be intentional about creating these spaces. And I think Santi and the whole team in Latin America, and from both Red Hat and from the open source community, has had the best intentions, have come to it with, you know, great passion, and done an amazing job building the community out down in Latin America. And I can't wait till I can get on a plane again and fly down and have some amazing barbecue with you all again, and maybe a caipirinha in Sao Paulo, or go to Chile, or wherever it is, and go, you know. And I just hope that you're all safe and happy, and with your families, and reach out and connect with us. Join the OpenShift Commons. It's an open community, and we would love to hear your stories and to have you share your stories with your peers. So, Santi, You are the best of us. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you so much, Diane.
All right. Take care, everybody. If you're listening out there in the ether, or if you're watching this afterwards, commons.openshift.org is where you can find all of this, and we will annotate this with some links to all of the past gatherings that you mentioned, Santi. Thank you for that, as well as who was the person who was the guy who talked about sex and community and that reference.
He calls himself the rational optimist. Let me, if we have the minutes, the rational Ridley. The name is Ridley.
Okay.
The last name. I can't remember his name.
We're gonna dig him up.
But you can look for the TED Talk. Is absolutely outstanding.
We're gonna dig him up and get him here and add him into the pantheon of people who are coming and doing Transformation Friday talks. Thank you for the inspiration and for all of your efforts again. So I think that brings us to the end of the hour. I want to thank our technical producer, Chris Short, for all of his efforts to keep this thread and streams going. And we'll talk to you all again next week, both on Monday at the LATAM OpenShift Commons gathering and on future OpenShift Commons briefings and Transformation Fridays. So take care, and thanks, guys.